At some point, the search for peace stops feeling hopeful. It starts feeling heavy, not dramatic. Not the kind of heavy that announces itself and asks to be dealt with. The quiet kind. The kind that settles into your shoulders so gradually that you stop noticing it is there at all. You are still meditating, still reading, still trying, still doing everything the teachings said to do. And somewhere underneath all of it, a feeling you would never say out loud. You are sitting in meditation and secretly waiting for it to be over. Not because peace is wrong, not because the path is wrong, but because somewhere along the way, the effort required to reach peace became the main source of tension in your life. And now you are using that tension to try to find relief from itself. And it is not working. And you are tired in a way that sleep does not fix. You know this tiredness. You have known it for a long time. This is where Anandamayi Ma enters. Not with a solution, not with a better technique, with something that cannot be taught and cannot be transmitted through words, and yet somehow is being transmitted right now. Before any teaching, before any explanation, there was something people could not ignore when they came near her. They would sit down in her presence and forget what they came to ask. Not because their questions were answered, but because the questions lost their urgency. The tight fist of needing to know, the desperate quality of spiritual seeking that most of us carry like a wound, simply softened in her presence, without her doing anything, without her trying. People described it differently. Some said the air felt different. Some said time moved differently. Some said they felt seen in a way they had never felt seen. Not by someone examining them, but by something that simply recognized them completely without judgment. She was not transmitting a state. She was simply being what she was. And what she was did not confirm the struggle. This is the part that unsettled people. She did not reward effort. She did not validate the identity of the seeker. She did not look at the years of spiritual practice you had accumulated and nod approvingly. She looked at you, at the actual you, underneath the practice and the progress and the carefully constructed spiritual identity. And what she saw there clearly did not require improvement. And that, for a mind trained in the project of becoming, is almost threatening. From childhood, states of profound stillness arose in her spontaneously. Not through discipline, not through years of seated practice, simply there, natural. The way breathing is natural, the way the sky is natural. When people asked what spiritual path she had followed, what practices she had done, what her method was, the question collapsed on contact. She said, "What path could there be? I never left. I never left." Sit with that for a moment, not as philosophy, as a description of an actual human being who moved through the world, who experienced everything a human being experiences, who encountered joy and grief and the full texture of ordinary and extraordinary life, without ever once arriving at a place she had not always already been. She was not describing an achievement. She was describing your nature, not the nature you will have when you have meditated enough, understood enough, healed enough. Your nature, now, as you are. Underneath every story you carry about not being there yet. And then she said the sentence that stops everything. There is nothing wrong with you. Not as reassurance, not as kindness offered to someone who is struggling, as a statement of fact, as precise and as literal as saying the sky is blue or water is wet. There is nothing wrong with you. For a mind trained in self-improvement, this does not feel like relief. It feels threatening. Because if nothing is wrong, if nothing has ever been wrong, then what was all the effort for? What is the spiritual journey if the destination was never actually somewhere else? Who are you without the project of becoming? Who are you without a future version of yourself to reach? This is the question underneath all the searching. And most people never ask it directly, because the answer is too disorienting to sit with. You are not a project. You were never a project. The one who decided you were a project. The one who looked at this human life and concluded that the primary task is to fix what is broken and become what you are not. That one is not you. That one is a story. A very convincing, very persistent, very exhausting story. But a story. Much of what is called spiritual seeking is not driven by love of truth. It is driven by quiet self-rejection. The belief, usually unspoken, often unrecognized, that who you are right now is not acceptable. That peace belongs to a future version of you. That the spiritual life is the process of closing the gap between who you are and who you would need to be, for it to finally be okay to stop. But the gap never closes, because the gap was never real, and the running, the constant, effortful, well-intentioned running is what hurts. She said it once in a way that leaves no room for argument. The search itself is the obstacle, not the thing you are searching for, not the path you are searching on, the searching. The very act of placing peace somewhere other than here, somewhere in the future, dependent on your progress, conditional on your becoming, is what makes peace feel perpetually just out of reach. Because it is. You placed it there. Here is what happens in the body when the search becomes the obstacle. You try to meditate. Fear appears, tension appears, old reactions return. And immediately, so immediately that you barely notice the movement, the mind interprets this as failure. I must not be there yet. Something is still wrong. I need to try harder. And so you try harder, which produces more tension, which gets interpreted as more failure. which generates more effort. This is the trap. You are using effort to escape the exhaustion created by effort. You are trying to fix the tension produced by fixing. Anandamayi Ma never treated discomfort as evidence that something had gone wrong. She said, "Suffering does not mean something is wrong. Pain belongs to the body and the mind, not to what you are. The problem is not experience. The problem is the meaning imposed on experience." The moment a sensation appears, the moment fear arises, or grief, or the restlessness that never seems to fully quiet down, the mind immediately turns it into feedback. Am I advancing? Am I regressing? Am I doing this correctly? She said, "Do not make a problem out of your experience." That one sentence collapses the entire internal courtroom, the one where you are simultaneously the judge and the defendant, where every thought and feeling and reaction gets evaluated as evidence for or against your spiritual progress. The judge disappears. Nothing needs to be justified. Nothing needs correction. The experience can simply be, the way rain simply is, without meaning anything about you. At this point, the mind resists, because this is where the fear appears, the fear underneath the fear. If I stop trying to change, it says, won't I remain exactly as I am? Fearful, reactive, unfinished? And this fear is worth staying with, not to answer it, to feel where it comes from, because underneath it is a contract, one that most of us sign so early we cannot remember signing it. The contract says, peace must be earned, stillness must be deserved. Rest is available only to those who have worked hard enough to justify it. Anandamayi Ma never signed that contract, and she never asked anyone else to honor it. She did not offer strategies for dissolving fear. She did not teach techniques for managing difficult emotions. She allowed everything to be exactly where it was. She received people in their most broken states, people who had lost everything, who had tried everything, who arrived at her with nothing left. And she did not try to move them from where they were. She sat with them in the stillness that was her natural condition. And that stillness did something that no technique could replicate. It showed them, without words, that where they were was not wrong. When people asked how to practice this, how to allow things to be as they are, how to stop making problems out of experience, she had a way of returning the question. She would ask, who is it that wants things to be different? Not to answer, to expose. Because the moment you actually look for the one who wants to change, the one who is convinced something is missing, the one who carries the project of becoming, you discover something extraordinary. You cannot find it. Not because it does not seem real. It seems intensely real. It feels like the most solid, most constant thing in your experience. But when you actually look for it, When you turn attention toward the one who is searching, what you find is not a solid center. You find awareness, open, undefinable, not the seeker, the space in which the seeker appears. She said, strength and weakness both belong to the mind. You are neither. Why do you think you are incomplete? Many people who sat near her reported something that they struggled to explain afterward. Their questions simply lost force, not because the questions were resolved, not because she said something that answered them, but because the pressure behind the questions softened. The urgency, the desperate quality of needing to know, needing to fix, needing to arrive, simply released. Without her doing anything, without them doing anything. Something in her presence demonstrated, beyond argument, beyond philosophy, beyond any teaching that can be put into words, that it is possible for a human being to exist without the background pressure of needing to be somewhere else. Without the constant low-level alarm that says, "This is not enough. You are not there yet. Something is still wrong." She was not proving this philosophically. She was being it. And when the mind encounters something like that, when it sits near a person for whom the war is genuinely over, not because they won it, but because they discovered it was never real, something shifts that cannot be unshifted. She said once, "Effort is needed only as long as you think something is missing. Nothing essential has ever been lacking." This is not a spiritual opinion. This is not a philosophical position. This is a description of what is actually the case. What was the case when you were born? What has been the case through every version of yourself you have passed through? What is the case right now as you are reading these words? Nothing essential has ever been lacking. The peace you have been searching for is not in the future. It is not waiting for you to become worthy of it. It is not hidden behind enough meditation, enough understanding, enough healing. It is here. It has always been here. It is what is present right now. When you stop for one moment, adding another layer of effort on top of the effort already running. Anandamayi Ma used a word for this: grace. She said grace is always present. Grace does not arrive. It is revealed when interference stops. You interfere. And then you look for grace. The interference is the searching. The interference is the project of improvement. The interference is the quiet, relentless, well-meaning conviction that you are not yet where you need to be. When the interference slows, even briefly, even imperfectly, even for a moment between one effortful thought and the next. What is there is not emptiness. What is there is not absence. It is what was always there. Before the search began, before the project of becoming took over, before you agreed to the contract that said you were not enough. Tension may still appear in the body. Fear may still arise. Old reactions may still surface. Anandamayi Ma never promised that realization means the end of human experience. She herself moved through every human experience with full feeling. But she showed, with her life, with her presence, with the quality of being that she inhabited, without interruption from birth to death, that it is possible to meet every experience without the extra layer of meaning that turns experience into evidence against yourself. The tension is just tension. The fear is just fear. The old reaction is just the old reaction. None of it means something is wrong. None of it means you are failing. None of it means the peace you are looking for is further away than it was before this moment. She said, "Let whatever comes, come." Not as a practice, not as a technique to perfect, as the simple recognition that what you are is not threatened by what appears in it. The sky is not damaged by the weather. The ocean is not diminished by the waves. And you, what you actually are, beneath the story of needing to become something, are not diminished by anything that arises within you. This is not a conclusion. This is an interruption. Not the interruption of a better idea arriving to replace the old one. The interruption of the whole project of ideas about yourself momentarily pausing. The space that opens when the fixing stops, not because you successfully stopped fixing, but because for one moment, the exhaustion was complete enough that the effort simply fell away. In that space, if you have ever touched it, even for a second, even without knowing what it was, you know that it is not nothing. It is the most full thing you have ever encountered. It does not require you to be different. It does not ask you to have arrived somewhere else. It does not confirm your progress or your failure. It simply is, and you simply are. And in that being, without any addition, without any subtraction, without any project of improvement operating in the background, nothing is wrong. Nothing has ever been wrong. Anandamayi Ma said this her entire life, in 1,000 forms, to 1,000 people who arrived carrying the exhaustion of the search. She is still saying it, right now, to you. Nothing is wrong with you. Nothing has ever been wrong with you. And when that lands, truly lands, not as a pleasant idea, but as a recognition that something in you already knows is true, the search does not end dramatically. It simply becomes unnecessary. Like putting down something you had been carrying so long, you forgot you were carrying it. And noticing with something close to disbelief how light your hands feel.